Just managed to get him over.
Yep, I'm on.
Sonic's having a go. Really overcast today.
Now the good thing about fishing in Portugal is you can catch bass at any time of the year, any season, they can be there. Summer's probably the toughest time that I found. Autumn can be a really good time. It can be one of the best times if you're lucky. Again, I think it's really hard to predict when's going to be good because it can change from year to year. I mean, this February, March time, people I've spoken to, it's been really quiet, so it could come on at any time. But in general, autumn can be a good time, but you do get bigger seas, so that's something to be careful of. So it can be quite dangerous. So I remember on this next trip I'd gone over, it was some stormy weather, some pretty big seas, as can be in the autumn. On this particular morning I'd got up on first light and gone out to fish, and it was like torrential rain. Then as I got up the west coast, it was lightning and thunder. Thunder was like lightning was right overhead, and I thought like it's going to be silly to go out in the dark fishing in this kind of conditions, and dangerous obviously with the lightning, having a fishing rod. So I decided to head back, you know, just have another cup of tea and just wait for the storm to subside a little bit and, you know, see what was happening. So one cup of tea later, thunderstorm seemed to be passing, so I got back up the coast. The time I got to my spot, it was now best part of the morning had gone. So I wasn't expecting too much that morning, but it's always on those days when you're not expecting it or you are expecting it, it can be different. And on this day, I had a great session and I hooked into 3 really nice fish. I actually hooked into 4. I lost the last one, came off the hook, but that was a definite double, that one. And on this morning, I managed to catch 2 doubles and 1 a little bit under.
Came off. Shit. Keep him on the top, it's just pure rock there. Bring him over that ledge. Pretty decent fish. Okay, so a nice fish there on the bottom. I was fishing over a ledge, so I wanted something I can bring over the ledge top water because the ledge is out the water, and I managed just to keep this one right on the top and bring him over.
So the next bass, bass number 15, that came on an unusual coloured lure for me at the time. I think most fishermen tend to have their favourite coloured lures. Mine has always been this kind of mullet type of colour, something which I consider to be like a natural colour. That would be my first choice. And also kind of white. I've always done very well on white, so I've always basically tended to stick to the lure colors that I'm confident with. But on that particular day, it was cloudy, overcast day, rainy. I decided to try with the rough conditions and over this ledge to stick on a high-vis tweak bait like that. And yeah, it wasn't long and bang, I was into a really big bass and the first fish on a chartreuse lure for me, basically because I hadn't really fished with them before. So it is always worth testing out different colors just to see, and I've definitely started doing that over the last few years.
Okay, managed to get that one. It's a fairly good one. Whoa, another really good sized bass.
Now this was an interesting catch for me because when I got the fish in, I knew it was a big bass, and I noticed a tail poking out of its mouth. And pulling out that tail, I was shocked at the size of the mullet that came out. It must have been a good few pounds, that mullet. Really big mullet had taken by the head. And yeah, still happy to take a lure. So it just shows you bass, they can be real opportunists, and if they're in the right mood, then you know they're going to hit that lure.
If you want to see what this bass just ate, with the colour of the lure, I'm certainly not matching the hatch. I don't know if you can see down there. Better get it out with his choke on. Flipping heck. That just came out, that mullet. Unbelievable. Can't believe that. And he's still hungry for a high-vis tweak bait. Another really nice sized bass. Oh, in nice condition. Okay, just going to say quickly, it's amazing how he took this lure. He'd just taken this big mullet, and that was just poking out the tail, so he took that in head first, and yeah, then took the lure. So amazing. So I was really good fun, and the high-vis tweak bait, I mean, I think that's the first, put him in the water, that's the first fish I've caught on a high-vis tweak bait over here. I only had a few casts of it in the summer, so yeah, pretty pleased with that.
So next fish, bass number 16. It came on the same lure. Obviously I kept the same lure on. If I'm doing well, I'm definitely not going to change things. So I kept on the high-vis tweak bait, and bang, got another big hit. Fish pretty much the same size. So there's nothing like fishing when the bass are on the feed. I think it was something that day to do with the barometric pressure with the storm, but I've noticed on quite a few occasions when I'm fishing, if it's really stormy and rainy like that, the fishing can really be on, and I think it really switched on the bite.
I'm on again. In the rocks for a second, but I got it out. The quick bait down. Just managed to get him over. Can't believe it, they're all about the same size around the double. It's another lovely fish that hit the tweak bait again. So I've got my confidence up in this high visibility, but I think it's about on what day. It's really overcast today, and yeah, anyway, it's working really well. So yeah, lovely fish.
Yeah, whenever you look back on the video footage, you can really remember the atmosphere and feel what it was like. And yeah, just basically, you know, great session to be out fishing, and you know, and a good lesson really to remember, if the conditions aren't that great, you never know unless you get out there, you know. So that was a day you could have easily, I think, stayed at home with the really heavy rains, but turned out to be a brilliant day. The next three fish was a very memorable little trip I had over in the winter time. It was just after Christmas. I just popped down for a few days to see my mum. I had like 4.5 days fishing, and the swell forecast was pretty big, so I didn't expect too much. And I remember the first session I headed down to the south coast. I had a lovely session just catching some okay sized bass, around 4 or 5 up to maybe £6, something like that.
Get this hook
And also managed to get a hook stuck in my hand.
Okay, that happens sometimes.
I had a really fun session catching some nice bass. It was all dependent on how fast the big swells would drop. The swells in the winter in Portugal can be really dangerous, and you always have to be careful and on the lookout for the sneaker sets. The sneaker sets are particularly dangerous because it can be really quiet in between, and then all of a sudden out of the blue a really big set hits, and this is what catches fishermen out. Unfortunately, the swells did drop in time, and I managed to get up and fish a nice reef spot over some shallow bassy ground. I was using the 50-gram Enticer minnow because I just had the airbrushed version in my favourite colour, the mullet. So I was looking forward to giving that a go, and it's not the kind of lure I'd probably use on the south coast. I was catching them on smaller profile lures. Not that it's a big profile, the 50-gram, it's like that, but more for me it's more suited for the west coast, unless it's, you know, pretty big on the south coast. Now I remember out in front of me I sort of had some rocks and boulders out in front, and as I was bringing the lure over that, I remember seeing this really big head of a bass hit my lure, and I knew I was onto a good sized fish.
Little taps on that rod tip. That's on, it's having a go. I'm on. And it's right over some rocks though, and try and keep it on the top. It's definitely a good fish, definitely.
So hooking this fish in quite close around all the rocks, it was a case of keeping its head up, keeping it as wet away from the rocks as best as I could. You know, when you've got some fairly strong seas coming in, it can be a little bit tricky around the rocks, but I remember landing it up against a rock and just trying to grab it as the next wave went over me. It's kind of one of those critical moments when you land in the fish, you know, and you can lose it at that point. I'd say it's probably one of the easiest places to lose the fish.
I can get it through these rocks here. Bang, it's big. Just right in between these rocks now. Bring him over with a wave if I can. That's a good fish. Hope I can get it up here. Okay, so that's a lovely bass. It felt very bassy today. It was perfect conditions for this Enticer minnow. I just stuck on this new airbrush one. It's an airbrush mullet that I've been really waiting to try because it's always been one of my all-time favourite lures, this Enticer minnow. It casts a mile, but actually I got the fish probably 3/4 of the way in, or more, a little bit more than halfway in. So yeah, really pleased with that. Maybe there's another few fish out there. I had a hit on the tweak bait, so yeah, I'm really pleased with that.
But fortunately I managed to land that one on the new airbrushed Enticer, so yeah, that was a great fish. I would have been probably happy just to have come back from that trip with that one double figure. But it ended up getting better. It was the last full day of the trip, and I was looking forward to getting up the west coast now that the swells had dropped. They dropped off pretty quick, so I was lucky because I wasn't sure if I was actually going to get a session in up the west coast. So the next day I was leaving. I had a flight in the evening, but I had time to get up there for an early morning session and have another go. I decided early morning first thing I'd stick on the Stealth Glide airbrush chartreuse white belly, which I put on, which is ideal for early mornings, and having more confidence in the chartreuse, I gave it a go. I think it was the first cast of the day. I was just sort of bringing it through really slowly, just tapping the rod tip from side to side, just bringing it over these shallow rods when there was a big hit, and again I knew I was onto a big fish.
Oh, I'm on. That's a good fish. I just put on the glide. The Stealth Glide with the chartreuse top. That was first cast from here straight into one. It's a good fish. So keep away from these rocks.
I knew it was a good sized fish, and I had the drag up pretty tight around those rocks, not to let it get too, not to let it run too much. But I never knew quite how big it was until I actually came to landing it. It was a really tricky landing, and probably one of those landings that I so easily could have lost that fish. It still makes me actually nervous just thinking about it. It could have just gone so different.
Fighting hard, this one. Yeah, bring him over the wave. I can just keep him on here. That's a good size bass.
I managed to get it up onto some rocks just ready to grab it, and at that moment a wave came right over, covered me, and just went to take the fish away, but I just managed to grab its tail, and at the same time the lure came out of its mouth. So if I hadn't managed to grab it, I would have lost that fish. And so yeah, it was a real relief to get it up for a photo before I let it go.
Freaking heck, that was lucky. Okay, that is a lovely bass. I'm over the moon with that. So last morning it was quiet to start with, and yeah, I didn't think it looked like there's anything around, and then boom, this one just came out of nowhere. It hit the chartreuse glide with the white belly. I was just bringing in slowly over the reef. Yeah, see if there's any more about.
It was the heaviest bass I'd had in quite a long while at 18 pound, and a brilliant end to the trip, I thought. So the swells were just dropping the whole time, so I decided to head for a spot that caught more swell, but it was still only, what, half a metre of swell there, I guess. So I decided to put on the little 21 gram bomb. Now this is the 30 gram bomb, and the 21 is a fair bit smaller, of course. I like to use that when it's small seas, or maybe it's a bit clear and I just want to splash it along the top and have something a bit more subtle.
Okay, I'm at a new spot now. I found a spot where I can use this 21 gram. Just going to fish for another hour. Sun's up high now, but it's the last little session of the trip. I don't think I can better the fish that I got earlier, but it's just nice to be out in a safe spot, just chucking some lures before I go, because it'll be the last fishing I do for probably about 6 weeks, I guess.
And I remember there was a rock out there about 40 meters, and I was just bringing it past that rock when I just saw the shape of a bass chasing it. And as so happens always, next minute you're on before you can even think. You can feel that bass on.
Yep, I'm on. I saw him following it. That's a really good one. I saw that bass fly out for it. Oh no. I hope it didn't go around that rock.
It was quite a good fight on the inside around that rock. I could have got snagged if I wasn't lucky.
I can get him over those rocks. Oh, there he is. Ah, it's a good bass. It's just got him over those rocks, but another decent bass, this one.
I managed to bring the fish around in pretty shallow ground and land that.
That's a good bass. Just keep that lure in. This is on the bomb.
It was quite a tricky fish to land over some shallow reef. I was just trying to keep the head of the bass up and avoid catching the line on the rocks.
Okay, it's a fantastic bass again. Can't believe it, another one on the last day. That's amazing. So I just seen this one come out and hit the bomb, and just come out of nowhere, and I thought, I hope he's going to hit it, and then bang, next second I'm on. So yeah, so pleased. I knew this little 21 gram would be good, and conditions were perfect for it. Let's get him back.
So I couldn't believe it when I landed that fish. There's another good double, 13 pound this time. Yeah, really a brilliant end to a trip. 3 double figures in just a couple of days. Really rare and really lucky. So really great memories again.
There he goes.